I love Bendy. I really do. I think Bendy and the Ink Machine is an okay at best game, to be fair, due to objective flaws with the gameplay, but I still have huge nostalgia for it, and I love Bendy and the Dark Revival. I'm a fan of the lore, and I'm excited for the movie adaptation of the series as well as the other games coming up like The Cage, so I do consider myself a fan of Bendy. Not as much as FNAF, but I'm still a fan. Now, LHUGUENY on the other hand, isn't a new topic for this channel either. I made a video ranking his FNAF musicals, which I might make an updated ranking of some days since 2 more FNAF musicals came out since that video. One of the 2 I have a lot to say about. But today, as you read in the title, we're going to be ranking every Bendy musical by LHUGUENY. I actually got a decent amount of requests to make this video, so here you go. There's 6 musicals for each of the 5 chapters from Ink Machine and 1 musical entirely for Dark Revival. So this won't be as long as my FNAF LHUGUENY musical ranking due to how many there are to rank this time in comparison to before. This should go without saying, but like I said in the FNAF video, I don't dislike LHUGUENY and his content. Sure, a lot of his content could be misses, but he has some hits, at least in my personal opinion, whether ironic or unironic. Also, most of these musicals are just called songs this time round, but I'm still gonna be calling them musicals because that's usually what LHUGUENY does, so yeah. With that out of the way, let's begin, shall we? So, the musical based off of the entirety of Bendy and the Dark Revival and not individual chapters unlike what he did with Ink Machine, as we'll see since the game of Dark Revival itself released in that way. And with that, I unfortunately have to be the bearer of bad news and say that this musical is the worst one out of his Bendy musicals and is honestly pretty bad. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not good. My biggest issue with this musical is how it feels very all over the place and jumbled together. Now, this can work in a song's favor, and LHUGUENY has done it before successfully. However, it doesn't work here because it doesn't have a flow to any of it. It all feels like checks on a checklist on what to include in a song or musical about Bendy and the Dark Revival, which is unfortunately a recurring issue that comes up a lot in musicals and songs created by LHUGUENY. Because of that, the pacing is weird in a bad way, and it all feels like a hot mess. As well, I feel like some of the character voices are pretty bad, and dare I say the word cringe.
Audrey, sweet Audrey, don't sob when the ink stains your laundry.
I hate using that word when critiquing media because of how much that word is used in a toxic and immature way online, but that is how I would sum up some of these character voices. A few of them are okay or even good, but man, some of them just don't hit. Also, Audrey's singing voice is pretty It's not bad, but I feel like there's some points where when she reaches high notes, it doesn't sound the best. Also, as well as feeling like this song is all over the place and jumbled together, it also feels like nothing at the same time. I don't get any vibe from this song, which is strange because the one thing I'll give this musical is that it tried a little bit and had ambition. But even with that, since the execution fell flat a lot, it really brings it down. Also, one other thing I must say about this musical, I'm not a fan of the art/animation style. It's a similar issue I had with the Security Breach musical, and yes, I acknowledge that both this and Security Breach the musical were animated by different people and not by LHUGUENY himself, but I'm still allowed to have my opinion on the animation. I think this style could use some work. It seems rushed. I would try more of the shapes and proportions of characters. The colors are okay, but also could use some more. The movements could also use some improvement, even if it's ironic bottom to barrel like LHUGUENY's animation movements. Just give it more life is all I'm saying. Otherwise, Bendy and the Dark Revival, the musical, while not terrible, is not very good, and I would say deserves the worst spot on the ranking list. D tier. The first ever Bendy musical by LHUGUENY, and this one is not very good as well. It's funny how the Bendy musicals started bad and ended bad. Yikes. But anyway, this one isn't terrible either. It's just not very good. My biggest issue with the musical or the song is it just feels like nothing, and that's basically it. It's not like Dark Revival's musical where it both feels like nothing and feels all over the place. No, this one is just nothing, and it leaves a boring taste in my mouth. I guess this musical is accurate to chapter 1 of Ink Machine when it comes to the lyrics, but yet again, it feels like there's a quota to be met, like a checklist, which is a shame. The instrumental and vocals both together just make the most nothing burger and bare bones experience that I could have with any form of music. My one piece of constructive criticism for this one is just to add more pizzazz to both the lyrics and the sound of the song to make it sound much more expressive. There's only 2 reasons why I place this one above Dark Revival's musical. First off, this part is actually pretty great in my opinion. and also because I feel less disappointed with this one in comparison to the Dark Revival musical. The Dark Revival musical set up quite a bit of ambitions to execute, and the execution was disappointing, making me feel worse for that musical, whereas with this one, I didn't really expect much, especially since it's based off of the shortest chapter in the entire game that already doesn't have much content. All around though, a pretty bad, but again, not terrible musical. D+ tier. This is the first musical on this ranking list that I would not call bad, although it's extremely mediocre, or mid, if you will. Why? Well, this musical is extremely weird and not in a good way. No, it's weird as in, it feels like it doesn't know what it wants to do, especially because of how many ups and downs there are in quality with this one. For one, the instrumental and the beat is actually pretty okay. I can see some people bobbing their heads to it. It's not the best instrumental to be fair, as the musicals coming up have so much more interesting and fire instrumentals, but this one's alright. Now, one of my biggest issues with this musical is that most of Henry's singing voice throughout this that sounds like whispering becomes a bit too much after a while. I don't think it's terrible vocals, but it certainly doesn't sound the best. Although the few moments where Henry stops singing whispering and goes to higher pitches actually sound pretty okay. Also, the repetition that Alice Angel brings to the song with her vocals wasn't really that good either and sounded kinda off. All around though, a very strange experience to be had with this musical. It's not bad, but it's not good either. Mostly vocal stuff with this one if I'm honest. C tier. Here we have the first musical on this ranking list that I consider good. I like the instrumental in this because of how much more upbeat it sounds in comparison to the previous instrumentals in the ranking list. Henry's vocals in this are pretty good too, and I think they jive well with the instrumental, which end up making the musical much more upbeat in a way. In terms of lyrics, the repetition is back, but honestly here, it's pretty good. There's flow within it, and it sounds not so bad. The only real issue I have with this musical is that Alice's solo is kinda eh. Again, I feel nothing from this solo. It's supposed to come across as intense, but in the end, I forget about it instantly. What a forgettable performance. With that aside though, I don't really have much else anything to say about this musical or song. It's decent. It sounds decent, it's written decently, it's just decent. Also gotta love the Boris plushie slaying the guitar in the beginning. B- tier. This musical is a huge step up from the previous ones. This one is actually pretty fucking good. What I love the most about this musical is that it sounds so badass. The intense feelings throughout this make this such a very thrilling song. I feel like the sole reason LHUGUENY went through with this route was how this was the final chapter for Ink Machine, so we went for a somewhat of a finale feel, similar to FNAF 6 the musical. However, Dark Revival came out and a musical was made of that. But this musical feels finale-esque in a way, and that's what I really like about it. The instrumental comes across that way, the vocals come across that way, the lyrics are alright, work has been done with a little bit with them, but they're still pretty good, and all around, this musical just makes Chapter 5 seem much more epic than it truly is. Me personally, I never cared for Chapter 5 of Bendy the Ink Machine from gameplay reasons to story reasons, and one of my biggest complaints with the chapter was how lame and boring and bare it all felt, even with that stupid ending. So seeing this musical basically take the lameness out of Chapter 5 and put a more epic spin to it is so much appreciated. Now obviously, it's not epic as in it is the best or grandest thing ever, but it still gave much more feeling than Chapter 5 of the actual game did. I don't want to say this musical is better than the actual chapter, especially since it's fucking LHUGUENY we're talking about here, but honestly, I have my preferences, that's all I'll say. All around though, pretty good musical. B+ tier. Bendy and the Ink Machine Chapter 2, the musical, is pretty fucking good. It is a banger. By far, the best part about it is the sound. The instrumental is so upbeat and will probably make someone headbop pretty fucking hard. Sammy's vocals on top of that, meshed with the instrumental, sounds almost perfect together. This musical sounds like a party of all things, which is something I kinda really like about it. It feels celebratory. There's a lot of energy present in this musical in general, which was nice. The lyrics were pretty good when it comes to Sammy's characterization. Sammy Lawrence was always one of my favorite characters from Bendy, and seeing how he was portrayed in this musical was pretty nice. I also just like and appreciate how Henry seems to be enjoying the song at the end after being scared before. Like, what a twist of events, and then the fucking ending came out of buttfuck nowhere with Boris and everything. Man, I love it. It caught me so off guard. The repetition throughout this musical was also alright. All around, a lot of aspects in this musical were done pretty well, and for that, I must say, Bendy and the Ink Machine Chapter 2, the musical, is the best Bendy musical / song that come from LHUGUENY. B+ tier. So in conclusion, LHUGUENY Bendy musicals are pretty hit or miss. Half of them are pretty much bangers and are pretty good, and the other half are either mediocre or straight up bad. I don't think the worst of LHUGUENY Bendy musicals reach the vile worst of his FNAF musicals like FNAF 3 the musical, but the best of his Bendy musicals don't reach the best of his FNAF musicals either, like FNAF 6 the musical or FNAF movie the musical. And you know what? That's okay. Even though we don't reach peak, we don't reach trash fire either. And as long as there was some good ones today, I'm happy. And thankfully there was, so you know how I feel. Like I stated in the intro, I might make an updated ranking of his FNAF musicals, which includes Springtrap the musical and FNAF movie the musical, and hey, if LHUGUENY decides to make more Bendy musicals like of The Cage or the movie, I might make an updated ranking of this video. Hell, I might even go the extra mile and rank every single LHUGUENY musical and song ever, like I plan to do with The Living Tombstone and DA Games and other indie fan song artists someday. Who knows? Guess we'll just have to wait and see, right?